Today, Amit Shah is conducting a high-level security review of Manipur. President's rule has ended, yet the state remains fractured. Since the violence exploded on May 3, 2023, the human cost has compounded. More than 250 people have been killed, and tens of thousands remain displaced, living in makeshift camps across the region. To contain the fallout, heavily armed central forces, including the Army and Assam Rifles, were deployed to maintain order. Yet despite this massive federal security footprint, the violence is not contracting. It is expanding into new pockets. Treating the violence purely as a security crisis has reached a dead end. Restoring order requires looking past the troop counts to the specific institutional failures that made this breakdown inevitable. The immediate trigger in May 2023 was a violent collision between two communities living side by side. These groups have shared this geography for generations: the Métis people and the Kuki-Zo tribes. On one side, the Métis community is driven by deep-seated anxieties over illegal immigration and demographic shifts that threaten their ancestral land. On the other side, Kuki-Zo groups hold profound fears of ethnic targeting, viewing the local government machinery as highly biased against their survival. When competing communities adopt a zero-sum territorial mindset, compromise feels like a betrayal. Ordinary citizens dig in, and every single isolated incident quickly escalates into a massive statewide political crisis. This 3D topographic map reveals the geography shaping the gridlock. Manipur is a flat central valley surrounded by rugged mountainous terrain. The Métis population is concentrated in this central valley. Meanwhile, Kuki-Zo and other tribal communities predominantly occupy the surrounding hills. The Central Valley is fertile and vital for agriculture, but it is spatially limited. It forms a geographically constrained bowl holding a dense population. In contrast, the hill districts are vast and difficult to navigate, characterized by lush, rolling mountain ridges with historically less access to centralized infrastructure. Post-independence policies regarding land ownership and reservations mapped directly onto these colonial-era administrative lines. These legal frameworks locked the demographics into their respective geographic zones, restricting migration between the valley and the hills. Geography and policy have fused to create a structural trap. When land strictly equates to economic and cultural survival, any proposed shift in policy turns the entire state into a highly combustible environment. The standard Indian federal response relies on a strict division of labor. The state government manages public order, central forces handle heavy security, and the Union Home Ministry coordinates. In Manipur, the primary tactical response to the violence was the creation of physical buffer zones by the Army and Assam Rifles, designed to forcibly separate the valley and the hills. These zones act as hard borders dividing a single state. Military checkpoints now strictly monitor access, physically enforcing the separation between communities. The immediate side effect is that these buffer zones sever economic supply chains. They freeze the free movement of goods, services, and ordinary citizens across district lines. Politically, it creates an impossible environment for the state government. You cannot execute uniform, day-to-day administration across jurisdictions separated by hostile military lines. While these lines prevent immediate casualties, they also cement the state's total inability to govern its own territory, turning a temporary safety measure into a permanent internal border. As the conflict freezes into place, political calculations delay the tough, essential decisions, like civilian resettlement programs or mandating inter-community dialogue. This map of Manipur's eastern border reveals an external geographic accelerant actively destabilizing the state, a highly porous boundary with Myanmar. A continuous influx of illicit arms allows non-state militias to arm themselves heavily. Without decisive state intervention to disarm them, these groups begin operating with near impunity across the region. The data from 2026 shows the clear result of this impunity. The conflict has expanded to pull in secondary actors, notably Naga groups, triggering a new wave of ambushes and hostage-taking. When armed impunity is tolerated, localized ethnic clashes inevitably metastasize. They draw in neighboring communities and evolve into complex, multi-front federal security threats. So, if you were advising the center today, what is the first practical step required to break this cycle of retaliation? Stabilizing the state requires moving beyond the static deployment of troops to confront the underlying source of the violence. As mapped out in this flowchart, the primary recommendation is the immediate, synchronized disarmament of all non-state militias, targeting both valley and hill-based groups simultaneously. To make that stick, there must be a simultaneous sealing of Myanmar influx routes to prevent factions from rearming. This must happen first, because political dialogue and civilian resettlement are impossible while ordinary people live under the localized threat of armed factions. Building infrastructure or creating administrative bridges provides no value if the communities using them remain armed against one another. Rebuilding Manipur's security depends on the political courage to dismantle armed impunity and re-establish the state's sole authority over the use of force.